Let's do it.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. For the record, we are doing this on a Wednesday night, which is rare for us. We have busy Thursdays ahead for each of us, and so we've decided to move this up a little bit, but it's not going to change the tenor of the podcast. We've got a lot of college basketball to talk about, college football, obviously the Bengals back in action. So we got a lot to get to, Rick. Let's get to it.
Yeah, Skinny. Well, the Bengals are coming off a bye week and preparing for a West Coast game against the 49ers. The Niners lost at Minnesota 22-17 on Monday night, so they'll have a short turnaround for this game. Let's start right there. Do you think it's a good thing, bad thing, or a neutral thing that the 49ers have lost their last two games leading up to this matchup against the Bengals?
Well, it's obviously going to change a little bit depending on the Brock Purdy situation. He's in concussion protocol, and it sounds like he's trending towards not playing. I think the last two games showed that maybe he's not a seventh round pick worthy, but maybe he wasn't the anointed one that everybody thought. It's a great story. He's done some amazing things, but then you have to wonder if the last two games been a little bit of regression to the mean, if you will, where eventually, you are going to throw some interceptions. He didn't throw a single pick until the last two games, and defenses are going to start to get a little more film on you and figure you out. They were down a major weapon, Deebo Samuel, and they may well be again. No word on Trent Williams, the left tackle. So, I think like a lot of teams in this league, injuries do factor in, and it showed they're a little bit fallible when a couple of key parts were messed up. I do think, going to Cleveland's not easy at the moment for anybody. And Cleveland didn't win their most recent game at home, but the Bengals only got 3 points. Tennessee didn't score a touchdown. This Frisco team, which has been so good offensively, lost and had 17 points and got beat up a little bit. But I do think what the last two games have shown is that they are as fallible as some other teams in this league. I'm not sure who is the unfallible team at the moment. Is it Philly? Is it Kansas City? Is it nobody? I don't know. I just know that it showed that, listen, they were anointed the team to beat after they beat Dallas on that one Sunday night. I'm not so sure they are at the moment.
Yeah, I had mentioned last week that it concerned me from a Bengals perspective to be coming off of a couple of bad games for the 49ers. Like I felt like you wanted the 49ers to play well against the Vikings coming into the Bengals game. But at the same time, after watching that performance, in some ways, I think it almost gives you a little more hope as a Bengals fan that maybe this 49ers team just isn't quite as good as they looked to start the season when everyone was anointing them.
Yeah, I think they are really good. I don't think they're as good as Philly, but again, don't discount losing Deebo Samuel of all the things that he does as a receiver, occasionally as a runner. They didn't use him as much as they did a couple of years ago when they used him at running back by default because they obviously have Christian McCaffrey. He's compromised a little bit physically too with the oblique situation. Now, he was a full participant in Wednesday's practice. That's probably a sign that things are at least trending in the right direction for him, and he did play on Monday night. But you're right. I mean, it's still a really good defense. The front is still absurdly good. You still have to contend with that. But the flip side is for the Bengals, and I asked Zach Taylor this today, didn't get the answer I was probably looking for, and maybe I shouldn't have expected an answer to the question of, it's kind of the first time your offense has been fully healthy. You got a fully healthy Joe Burrow. You got a healthy T. Higgins. It's kind of the first time you got a chance to do all the things you wanted to do. Does it feel like that? The answer wasn't a great one. It probably wasn't a great question either. Maybe that's why I didn't get the answer I wanted. But really, in theory, this really is the first time they've got kind of all hands on deck with a chance to do what you want to do and unlock everything you wanted to do offensively. I think that's a huge key for this team.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we've been talking about what we want to see this team do better, whether that be whether that be running the football more effectively, whether that be getting different guys going that aren't just named Jamar Chase in the passing game. And I think those are probably the two areas where I'd want to start with you in terms of the Bengals side of things is, do you think we'll see a different T. Higgins after the bye week?
I do, and I think some of that's going to be tied to the play-action passing game. I don't have the stats in front of me. We talked about this a little bit in last week's podcast. My friend Paul Daner Jr. of The Athletic did a nice deep dive into something I kind of wrote about too, about the whole under center thing and the play action. T's numbers when he's been targeted in play action are ridiculously good. And so that tells me that who's going to benefit from play action, not just this offense, but T. Higgins perhaps individually as much as anything else. And again, They're not going to go under center 90% of the time. They're still going to be shotgun Joe Burrow, but there's also going to be under center Joe Burrow. And I think Joe kind of gave a soft shoe answer to it today, because I think a lot of these guys, I don't want to tip my hand that we're going under center. Dude, we watched you go under center at some today in practice, and so you're definitely going to do it some. How much is up to you? So he kind of gave the answer of, well, we'll see. But he did say, hey, it does unlock some things in the play action game. It should unlock some things in the downhill run game, some things I talked about last week. And the guy in particular, I think that benefits is going to be T. Higgins.
I think this would say a lot about T. Higgins' value going forward. Like, go dominate for the final 11 games.
Right.
Prove you're a number one type receiver like you've shown at times throughout the early part of your career here. You do that, and you guarantee yourself a huge payday, whether it's from the Bengals or someone else. And we've talked, it's probably not going to be the Bengals, and that's fine, but it's still very mutually beneficial for him to come back and play really well these final 11 games.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to give him a pass for the last two. I'll even give him a little bit of a pass for Cleveland with the weather and the fact that Joe Burrow was inaccurate, not just with T. Higgins, but with everybody in that game. We're not on the same page. So it is a smaller sample size than we'd like to look at. But to your point, you're right. Now you've got 11, hopefully fully healthy games with the offense completely unlocked and not hindered in the 5-yard window, and Joe Burrow being a statue and all those things. Really, this is the full offensive arsenal you got a chance to throw at them. Yes, you go ball out. Could you average 5 catches for 80 yards in the last stretch? That's 55 catches and 880 yards just in those games alone, Rick. That probably actually that would get him over 1,000 yards for the season, despite missing a game, for goodness sake. So he still has a chance to put up some numbers. And if he does, which he has done before, I do think this offense takes the step forward everybody expects it to take, and that it needs to take. And it's going to be a playoff team.
All right. You've talked a lot about the Bengals going under center more here after the bye week with Joe Burrow healthy, with things kind of settling down a little bit. You're expecting them to play under center more. We talked a little bit about the need for a running back 2 option and potentially trading for Samaje Perine. We obviously don't think that's going to happen at this point, but do you think the Bengals run game will be improved after the bye week?
I don't know if it will immediately, just because of how good San Francisco is against the run. But I do think you'll see some better runs from this group. It may be, choppy at times, especially in this game. And this is the hard one to unlock. Like, hey, this is going to finally be the week the run game pops. Even if the run game was really good, I think it would struggle a little bit in this game. But I do think you'll see some better runs from Joe Mixon. I think you'll see some better from the offensive line. To your point, I would love to see them get whoever they think is the number 2 back moving forward 5 to 7 touches. And again, some of that's game dictated, some of that's tempo dictated, some of that's how many possessions dictated. But at some point, you're going to have to get a second running back to do something more than touch it once a game, pass block twice a game, and get off the field. And then, it's 3rd and 7. We need Drew Sample in there to pass block. You got to get something more out of that backup running back. And it needs to start sooner rather than later.
Well, and that might be the point right there too, Skinny. Part of it might be giving them more of an opportunity, because we can talk all day about how there's been no production from that spot. And I realize that a lot of those opportunities are earned in practice. If they don't trust you with what you're showing every day in practice, they're not going to give you to you on Sunday when games are on the line and those precious wins that are so hard to come by are on the line. But I mean, I think it'd be hard to say that either of these backup running back options have gotten much of an opportunity at all to this point. So maybe the answer is they do need a few touches per game to actually get a feel and get going at all.
Yeah, and again, some of this has been game dictated, right? Like the first game against Cleveland, you fell behind, you tried to throw to get back into it, and then you got in garbage time and nobody did anything. And then the Baltimore game, because of the way Baltimore plays, you don't get a lot of offensive possessions. And then, the Rams game, the way it kind of played out, boy, you needed to win that game, so you're not going to trust backup running backs to get many touches. And so it's been, I think, a combination of a lot of things where that hasn't happened. But now here's a fresh start, a fresh slate. And to your point, yeah, I mean, give it to Travion Williams 5 times. And if he only gains you 7 yards because he goes the wrong way, runs the wrong tracks, etc., and some of that maybe it's not his fault. It was 5 really good carries that got him really good 7 yards. See what he can do in those situations. And to your point about the trust, even to Travion against the Cardinals, if you remember, Joe Burrow made a check that Travion apparently didn't hear, went the wrong way. Joe Burrow lit him up, did hug him out coming off the field, which is the right thing to do. But at the same point, he's got to trust that cat to do the right thing too. And if he doesn't, what are we doing? I mean, we need somebody that needs to be trusted by somebody back there.
Skinny, before the season, we made our predictions on how the Bengals would fare, and you did your likely wins, likely losses, and your swing games. Do you remember what the record was that you predicted prior to the season?
Yeah, 11-6, and I had them with 3 likely losses, which was the San Francisco game, unfortunately, the game against Baltimore on the Thursday night coming up on the road, and then at Kansas City. They've already played 4 swing games, and they're only 1-3 in those. I did have them going 4-3 mythically in swing games. So, maybe this is one where you can steal one back in the likely loss column. Now, I said every year I've done this thing. Every year a likely loss becomes a win. Like last year I had them likely losing at Tampa Bay and they won. And a likely win becomes a loss, like a couple of years ago against the Jets up there with I don't even remember his name now, Mike White lighting it up. That was going to be a likely win, whether it was Mike White or anybody else, and it turned into a loss. So those two always seem to even themselves out. It really seems like it comes down to the swing games, and they've been really good in those over the last couple of years. Well, you've already burned 4 of the 7 opportunities I thought were there in swing games. You're 1-3, so you kind of got to run the table. And the swing games left for me, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, are the Buffalo game next week at home, at Jacksonville on that Monday night game, Pittsburgh on the road, and that's it. Those are the 3 because they're 1-3 at the moment. So the 3 swing games left. Can they really sweep all 3 of those? I think that's a big ask, but can you take one out of the likely loss column and steal one? And here's your opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, you named off a few of the results already. So I think they've had 2 likely wins, or games that you predicted as likely wins, and they won both of those, right? That was Arizona and the Seahawks. Yeah.
And the Rams. The Rams.
Or the Rams, excuse me.
The Seahawks was a swing game. That got them their one win in the swing games, because I had the opener at Cleveland, the home game against Baltimore, and then the game at Tennessee just because it was on the road. And I really thought they'd steal at least one of those, if not 2, and they ended up taking a whiff in all 3. So you've got to back yourself up to where you want to get to record-wise. I went 11-6. I re-predicted it in a column I did this week to go to 10-7 just because of where they're kind of at. 10-7 isn't going to get you the seed you want, but it will get you in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's the point I was just going to make. It's funny because we talked about going into that last game before the bye week, how different you would feel about this team. And I think if they were 2-4 right now, I don't know that you're getting to 10-7 and saying this team is very likely to be in the playoffs if they were 2-4, but they got back to 3-3. And now, I mean, just the way you broke it down in the column that you wrote this week and said, yeah, okay, my prediction has changed by a game, but I still have them at 10-7. I still have them as a likely playoff team. I mean, that's exactly where I'm at. And I think most Bengals fans probably feel somewhat similar, that last game before the bye week was such a big win.
And Rick, if you steal this one, and it would be a steal because they are a good team and you're playing in their place and you're going to the West Coast. And to your point, they've lost 2 in a row. So what sense of urgency do they feel? Obviously a ton, I'm sure. But you go steal this game and you go, boy, this team after the bye, it's really been something over the last few years. And here they go again. And I'm going to guarantee you, whether they say this or not, that's going to be their feeling too of, here we go again. We're getting this thing right. Look at us when we're healthy. Look at us. Hey, since Joe Burrow's been healthy really for the last 3 games, meaning Arizona, Seattle, in this game, we're now 3-0. Boy, look at us when Joe Burrow's fully healthy, or at least close enough to full health. What can we do? So, well, you steal this one, it opens up a lot of possibilities.
I do think there's something to that mentality in sports too. I mean, look at the Patriots over the years. There's been plenty of other examples in football, but you go to college basketball, you think about a team like Michigan State, that has had so many teams where they are really good, they make a run, and then, okay, maybe they're not great that following year, but those same group of guys just expect to play well at that time of year, and they go and they make their run. I think there is something to that mentality, and I do think that's going to take over for this group. Skinny, real quick, you can get the Bengals at plus 650 still to win the AFC North, and you can get them at plus 2,800 or 28-1 to win the Super Bowl right now. Do you like either of those odds?
I like the AFC North. I still think is going to be really hard if Baltimore stays healthy. I mean, just because they've got the game in hand already, you have to go steal one in their building, and that's still going to be really, really tough to do. I don't think even at 10-7, I mean, you probably wind up at best tying a Baltimore or a Cleveland or whomever for first, and they've got the game in hand already, and you haven't had a lot of success inside the AFC. In fact, they're winless in the AFC, Rick. They're 3-0 against, goofy enough, the NFC West at this point, which they're playing the NFC West team this week. So you're 0 for so a lot of the tiebreakers, you've just mucked it up to this point, which will make it tough. But to the point of, do I think this can be a playoff team? Absolutely. And as we've seen with this team, whether you like it or not, whether it makes you sweat or not, whether it's the perfect scenario or not, which it's not. They've proven they can go on the road and win games. So 28-1 for Super Bowl, I like. The odds to win the AFC North, I do not like.
Yeah, I think
That
28 to
sounds
1
weird,
is
right?
Yeah, but it makes sense to me too, because I think the 28-1 is kind of like the last chance on the Bengals Super Bowl odds. They were way lower to start the season. If you wanted to play that number, they were like fourth or fifth lowest odds out there
like
because
9-1.
they were one of the
9 to
favorites.
1-ish.
Yeah, and then they went sky high when the Bengals started off 0-2 and were really struggling. You could have got it at better odds than it is right now, but 28-1 is still really good if you feel like this team is a legit Super Bowl contender. The thing is, after this point, you're either they're going to start winning more games. Like if they beat the 49ers, those odds are going to decrease a bunch again.
Correct.
Or if they lose more, then do you really want to consider playing this at that point? I don't think you would. So to me, this is the kind of the last chance buy on Bengals Super Bowl odds. Personally,
I'm with you. And 28-1 is a juicy price for a team that I still think is very capable of doing that. And I say that again, thinking just mathematically how hard it's going to be to win the North. So for me, give me 22-1 extra than the 6-1 to win the division to win it all. If you're gonna get in, might as well go for the whole shebang.
I agree. 6.5 to 1 just isn't enough to entice me there on something that's going to be so difficult. All right, let's switch gears to college football, and we're going to talk about the local games. There are only 2 of them, but we've got to start with the story that everyone is talking about around the college football world this week, and that is the Michigan scandal. The NCAA is investigating Michigan for allegedly sending a guy to games of other college football teams that Michigan might play and having him film the sidelines to steal their signs. The staffer would then use that information to relay the calls to the Michigan coaching staff during games. And there's no evidence as of yet that Jim Harbaugh or other Michigan coaches knew about it, but there is reportedly video evidence of it happening. As I'm going through that, Skinny, of course, is making all kinds of gang signs on the screen there. Skinny, what do you make of all of this? What should the penalty be, assuming it's all true, which it appears to be? I mean, this is truly just an absolutely silly, but also very college athletics-like story.
So, Rick, in full disclosure, I've not read the latest today, but what I heard on one of the national shows, it sounded like they're leaving this up to the Big Ten to mete out punishment. Is that correct?
That could be true. I didn't see that part of the update. I was looking at some stuff just before we went on, but what do you do with Michigan right now? They're in the midst of running to a national championship potentially, and meanwhile, you've got this scandal.
Right. So if you're the conference and you have 2 legitimate contenders, right? Ohio State and Michigan, Penn State has fallen by the wayside, but you have 2 legitimate contenders to win this with the potential for both to get in. I mean, if they both get to the final game undefeated and it's another good game and that team, that's the only loss they suffer, etc. Again, you could get both of these teams in. And the money that each team gets in the conference, the share of this is significant. Do you think you're really going to, if you're the Big Ten, rule against Michigan here? You may kick the can. You may rule in 2 years. You may rule in 3 years that, you know what, they fired the staff, or we're glad they did that, so they meted out their own punishment. And yeah, Jim Harbaugh's got 2 games. Meanwhile, by that point, Jim Harbaugh's coaching the Chicago Bears. So at the end of the day, what does this really do? There's going to be nothing to this when all is said and done. Nothing.
Well, and even if they leave it up to the NCAA, like the NCAA is known for moving quickly on matters like this, I mean, that'll be 10 years from now before we ever hear about anything, and that'll just be a slap on the wrist to the 4th or 5th Michigan coach since this all happened. So I don't know what can actually be done. I don't have much faith in the idea that Michigan's season is going to be shut down, nor do I necessarily want that, because this makes for incredible drama. Like the rest of the season, each Michigan game is going to be so drama-filled. That Michigan-Ohio State game, assuming they're both undefeated now, is just the ratings for that and the amount of trash talk between the fan bases and everything that goes into that is just going to be perfect for college athletics. So I like this. This is funny to me, but at the same time, if I'm a fan or a member of the staff or one of the players for an Ohio State fan, for instance, I'm livid about this. I do not want Michigan to be allowed to compete.
Here's the thing. Here's why I don't think teams in the Big Ten are going to want to do anything about this. Now, certainly Michigan took it to an nth degree by this cat buying tickets in other stadiums and going around to watch to some degree. Although I'm going to tell you why I think this is overblown. Don't tell me that other teams aren't figuring out ways to try to steal signs. and signals. And the funny thing to
For
me is
sure.
you see it every Saturday, Rick. There's 5 quarterbacks on the sidelines. They all have different vests on. 4 of them are dummy calls, and one guy's the live guy. Good luck to you figuring out who the live guy is when it all's said and done. I mean, that's the part for me.
Well,
Come on.
the thing is, and I think that's where this comes in. If you're filming every single play and then you watch the big hitters, you can probably pair it up as like, okay, they ran that twice. There's the commonality between them running it is that sign was up both times. I mean, like
I think if you're a smart staff, you're changing the dude who's doing it every single solitary week. You're changing that dude around, or you're changing maybe from series to series for all I know.
Maybe. And look, I think the argument that this isn't really that big of a deal in terms of like gaining a competitive advantage, because every team is trying to do this to some extent. And as you're pointing out right now, how good can you really be at it? I think that may be a fair one. At the same time, the fact that you are intentionally going out of your way to cheat like this, it does make it a big deal. Like it just, you aren't just doing it the way everyone else is doing. It's kind of like the Astros. You're not just figuring out if a guy is tipping his pitches and then doing what you can to relay it to your teammates in a legal way. You're going out of your way to skirt the system and cheat. And I mean, with the past allegations against Jim Harbaugh, at a certain point, we just have to call a spade and realize that like this guy, it's kind of like people that like having sex in public, Skinny. At some point, the thrill of doing it and potentially getting caught is why they're doing it. And I think that's the case with Jim Harbaugh.
Why did you use my name with emphasis right there when you said that?
Well, I should have just, you've only been arrested once in your youth, from what I understand.
Yeah,
so
not for that.
Yeah,
not for that.
I didn't mean that.
I get it, but here's the thing. And at the end of the day, when this all comes down and push comes to shove, if Jim Harbaugh feels the heat is going to come down for whatever is going to happen to him, he's going to get stripped of this. He's going to the pros. He's going to jump. He might jump to the Bears after this year and go, you know what the hell? I'm not going to deal with any of this crap.
Right. That's the thing about all this. It matters very, very little to Jim Harbaugh. And like, if you're a Michigan fan, how do you feel about this? Do you care at all? Do you does it bother you that Jim Harbaugh is your coach still, or not at all?
No.
Yeah, you still want him, right? I mean, you want to keep him around. You want to beat Ohio State. You want to potentially win a championship.
What bothers me is he can't beat TCU. That's what bothers me if I'm a Michigan fan.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly right. And this is so perfectly college athletics. It's something that can only happen there. And it's perfectly caught in between something that's so stupid and doesn't matter, and yet is like the biggest story in the world right now.
And my man's name, what is it? Colt. I know his last name is Stallions. Is it Colt Stallions? Is that what's his first name?
Connor Stallions, right?
Connor Stallions. What a great name. And he's a Navy SEAL. I mean, he's an Army ops guy. He's got all. He is the spy of spies, man.
Well, and to that point, shouldn't this be more sophisticated? They were buying tickets using the coaching staffer's name to buy the tickets, and then the guy who's doing it, his buddy or whatever, is going there and filming it with his cell phone.
Well,
that's what they're using from that far away. Like, we can't get him, my man, like something a little bit more high tech. It's 2023.
I mean, at least the Patriots tried to sneak in the press box and shoot it under the guise of Patriots media people, and I still love when they got caught up in Cleveland trying to do the Bengals side. That was the best. But that's when the Bengals security guy goes, too late, the gig's up, my friend.
You guys were all in there for that, right? You got to see it?
We didn't even know what was going on. We didn't even know the dude was getting busted, and he's right next to us.
Just beautiful. But I mean, isn't there probably an easier way to do this in 2023? Like, there's got to be enough video feeds and cameras and different things that they can get access to where they don't have to physically be there filming it with a cell phone from 400 yards away.
Correct. And I still go back to if you steal signals, can you really know what's coming? Do you really know what's coming? Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I will say some of the video evidence is fascinating, and every staff is doing this. They're looking to see what the other team is going to call, and then they're relaying their own adjustment, right before the snap as well. But some of the video other teams had showing Connor Stallions relaying calls to the defensive coordinator is pretty damning and pretty funny. I mean, this is just so great for college football rivalries.
The guy I coached for at Beechwood High School, I won't give away his secret, but he was such a great underneath out of bounds play designer and play caller. So what would happen is the other 3 or 4 assistants on the bench of us would all do different hand signals, right? And he had his own method for calling the play that was very silent, very subtle. No one ever. In fact, we'd have coaches for other teams going, we're not trying to ask what you got, but how do you guys do it? Because we can't figure out what your underneath out of bounds stuff is. Oh, really? Well, It's really, we've got this down to us. I mean, all these teams are more sophisticated than we little stupid ass high school coaches were. They got to figure out how to mess with these teams.
And by the way, why can all this money we're talking about that these teams, these
I know where you're
conferences
going
are
with
making,
this.
why can we not just put telecoms in the helmets?
Correct. And in fact, as much as I think Brian Kelly is a clown and he killed someone once, as we know, he's right in what he said
He
today.
did.
He did kill the kid.
He
But
did.
he's
He
right
killed
in what
a
he
guy.
said today of why is this complicated that we can't do this in the helmet? I mean, all the money that's around college football and we can't do this in a helmet? Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that drives me crazy about it. Is like, why are we even talking about this still as a thing when, I mean, what does that cost to add an electronic, telecommunications device inside a helmet in 2023? It can't be that big of a deal.
Especially if they're as paranoid as they are about people stealing their signals, right?
Yeah. Well, the best thing is, who was it, Georgia earlier this year, who had the big like flag or whatever awning that they held up, so it was covering up their calls being relayed down, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're so paranoid." Well, it turns out they knew what was going on the whole time. They were just trying to avoid
95 Y, Z waggle, 34 on 2. You can't see my voice. You can't see me doing anything. It's also stupid. Just, you know what?
All
Coach
right.
your dudes up and run the play and call it a day, my man.
How about execution there, Jimmy? How about that, huh?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Ohio State beat Penn State 20-12 in the game of the week, Skinny. The score of this game honestly felt closer than the game actually was. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. dominated. I thought JT Tuimoloau dominated. Cade Stover had some great plays. Aside from that, I mean, I don't know that there was much to talk about or much that stood out, but this felt like Ohio State clearly better, clearly a cut above that next tier that includes Penn State and some other teams.
Yeah, and until Penn State breaks through, you can't believe in them to break through. And it feels like every time they get to a game like this, their offense folds into a shell or they make stupid mistakes. And Ohio State is simply light years better still, and so is Michigan at this point. So, and James Franklin's a douche to boot, so I'm glad that he lost. He's a clown. And honestly, his offense looked very pedestrian. We both talked last week. I missed the game because I thought, from a point spread perspective, I thought it was going to be within a score. So I had Penn State plus the points. But we both thought it was going to be this kind of a scoring game, and it really was. And to your point, Penn State got a late touchdown, not a cheapie, but because they drove the field, but a late touchdown that made it closer. Ohio State dominated them. That offense wasn't going to do anything that day against that Ohio State defense. That's where I go back to, I know I can't trust the Ohio State offense, but I can trust the defense. And I can trust that if Marvin Harrison's healthy, he is probably in every big game going to make enough big plays to save their ass. Do I think they're a great team? Do I think they're the best team? And I've seen a couple of college football predictors. I think ESPN's predictor has them now as the favorite to win the national championship. I'm not sure I buy that, but I do buy that defense being national championship caliber. And I do believe Marvin Harrison's the best player in college football, and he's going to make plays when you need him to. That's why I don't need signals to go, throw it to 18 on 2, ready, break. I mean, honestly, I don't need that's it's pretty simple. Hey, we're going to throw it out here to this guy and you can't cover him. Good luck.
Well, and that's a great point. Like, when your weakness of your team, which is Ohio State's offense, and probably, I mean, the running game is not very good either, but the passing game at times and the quarterback play is suspect at times. But that also includes Marvin Harrison Jr., who, as you just said, is probably the best player in all of college football. When you have that type of talent as part of your weakness, it gives you a chance, and it really covers some things up. Speaking of Marvin Harrison Jr., by the way, do you think he's a legitimate Heisman candidate?
I do, because of how Caleb Williams has obviously fallen off the radar. I'm going to give Michael Penix Jr. a pass a little bit for the Arizona State or the Arizona game, whatever it was. Some of that, everybody's going to have a one-off. They just are along the path. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a one-off. But if you want to take Caleb Williams out of the equation at the moment, if you scoff at Washington, although they're going to push their way towards being in the college football playoff, but if you want to scoff at Michael Penix Jr., and this was a game that took him off the radar, at the moment, Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the guy. I mean, he is clearly the guy in college football, in my opinion, at the moment, that single-handedly is carrying an offense. Penix pretty damn close. When he is on, he carries that Washington offense. But, boy, Marvin Harrison Jr. is stupid special. And he's doing it with a quarterback that, no offense, he's not elite. And maybe Kyle McCord becomes elite one day. He's not elite. So he's doing that without an elite running game and without really an elite quarterback.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. would be my Heisman pick right now. And part of it's because he's doing it in big games. Ohio State
Right.
probably has the best resume in college football right now, and he's shown up in those big games. He just takes over. And I don't think another player is like that this year. Michael Penix, I'm sorry. He's having a great year. It's a great story. I just don't see him as a real Heisman winner. It's just hard for me to see that being the case. I think he'll play himself out of that by
Well,
the time we get there.
and right or wrong, playing on the West Coast still because again, this is a voter-driven award.
Yeah.
Voters may see stats or see results, but they don't see him because I do think he's special. But to your point, if I had a vote today, to your point, I would vote for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, this is probably unfair, but going back to Kyle McCord, is he good enough to beat Michigan or Georgia?
It's a great question. I wasn't sure he was good enough to beat Penn State, and when he needed to make some throws, again, he did it. And I think for this kid especially, it's just don't put us in a hole, son. Don't make any bad mistake. Don't force something that's not there. Let our defense keep setting you up enough to where you're finally going to hit a big play or two. We've got a special athlete that's going to make a big play or two, and we'll go from there. So, again, he's not elite, but I will say I don't think he does put them in harm's way very often. That's a big part of quarterback play. It's an underrated part of quarterback play. He really doesn't put them in harm's way a ton. He'll take a sack rather than force a ball, and I think that's fine. If you take a sack and you say, you know what, the hell with it, we're just going to punt and play defense, and we'll get it back and see where we're at, I'm good with that. I think that's a good formula, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's like to a certain extent, is he good enough to beat Notre Dame? Well, he went out and beat Notre Dame, and maybe that wasn't a lot of him. It was more the defense, but he got the win.
He led a big drive.
Is he good enough to beat Penn State? Well, okay, he went out and beat Penn State. So he keeps answering the bell. He has an undefeated team, and you look at his numbers, and quite honestly, they're pretty darn good. I don't see that type of playmaker that Ohio State and some of the other top teams have at that position. He's just missing some throws. I mean, in this game, especially against Penn State, I thought it really could have been a blowout if you factor in the red zone trip where they had it inside the 5 and they didn't get a touchdown.
Didn't get in.
And and then they had the play early where he missed on what could have been like an 80-yard touchdown, wide open receiver, and he misses badly. There's just too many throws that are being missed, and I hate to do this because it is unfair at this point to him and definitely unfair to the team after a great win against Penn State. But I can't help but think when I look at this and I start thinking about what's down the line that he could be what cost them against Michigan or Georgia at some point. But you want to be in that position, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly. Let me be in that position. Let's see what maybe the kid responds better than we ever think.
Yeah. Should Ohio State be ranked number 1 in the first college football playoff rankings when they're released next week?
No, I still think that should be Georgia. I mean, I hate to be the guy that says until you beat the king, they're the king, and until you beat the king, they're the king, in my opinion. I mean, it just is what it is. They're still, you can argue with what they've done, and maybe they haven't been pretty at times, blobbity bloobity blee. They still kick people's ass for the most part.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and that's certainly how the AP poll sees it. Georgia's number 1, Michigan number 2, and Ohio State number 3. But the argument that I've seen being made, and I do think the college football playoff rankings have been a little bit different in this way. They really seem to value your resume at that point in time, and if we're just looking at
is Ohio State's resume that pristine?
2 top 10 wins. No one else has that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I get your point there, I guess, but they haven't been pristine either because we keep questioning their offense, right? So
right.
I'm sticking with the king until somebody beats the king. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is for me. And maybe they slop it up against Florida and get their ass beat or look really ugly, and that changes my opinion. But even in some of the wins that have been ugly for them, like the Auburn game, they still won and they still did the things they needed to do to win, and that still matters in my opinion. Listen, when you play in a major league. Again, Ohio State didn't look great on Saturday, but I'm not apologizing, nor should they, for beating Penn State by 8 at home. It's a good win. It's not it's not marquee in my opinion. It's a good win. Take it and run to the bank.
Yeah, I think the only argument that I really see is just the idea that you have Ohio State has the more impressive resume to this point, being that they have the 2 big wins, and Georgia just hasn't played that level of competition yet. Right. Now, they obviously play the the highest level of competition you can play when you play in the SEC. But in terms of the games that they've played this year so far, it just, they don't have those two standout wins yet. And
let me go back to this. Let me ask you this. I'm going to put them on a neutral field. Who's the favorite?
I think Georgia should be. And like, again, I don't have any argument against Georgia being number one, even if they are in the college football playoff rankings next week, the number one team. I have just seen the argument for Ohio State by a couple of different people since the Penn State win. And I thought, that's an interesting point. I can see it either way, I guess. I don't have a real strong opinion on this one.
Yeah, and obviously those games, the college football playoff games are neutral sites in theory, although you don't want Georgia playing in Atlanta when the time comes. It won't happen this year, but you don't want that. But, these are all new. So you get a chance to prove it. And that's the great part about it. I mean, you may not always like the Final Four, et cetera, and who's there and whatever, but the teams that are there get a chance to prove it. Like last year, it didn't look like TCU had any business playing with Michigan, right? And there they got a chance to prove it, and they proved it. And then in the national championship game, cute little TCU got proven against it because Georgia proved it was the best. So when push comes to shove, no matter who's won here, however this shakes out, if it ends up being at least the top three teams in the college football playoff, they're going to get a chance to sort themselves out, which I think that's the best part of it.
All right, Cincinnati's comeback attempt fell short against Baylor's. They fell 32-29 at home, back-to-back losses at Nippert. UC was trailing 29-14 headed in the fourth quarter of this game, Skinny. They managed to make a game of it, but were just not able to come up with the final points they needed there in the final 5 minutes. What were your thoughts on a fifth straight loss for UC's football team?
It's just disappointing because I'm not asking you to go beat Oklahoma in year one. I'm not. Nobody is. Nobody should have been, and nobody was, I don't believe. But Iowa State and Baylor at home in a year where they're both meh, you got no excuses there. You have none if you think you're going in the right direction. And so the distressing part is this, and Jason Williams of the Enquirer wrote a column of how much time do you give Scott Satterfield. And it is an interesting – I debated it with him a little – not debated, we talked about it. I was on the radio show on WLW on Friday on Eddie and Rocky's show, and Jason was filling in as a host. And the question was asked of me about that. And I said, I don't know what the timeline is. I don't know if it's 2 years or 3 years. I just know if you feel like you're digging a big hole, you better get the hell out of that hole as fast as possible. And I don't know if that's the case right now with Scott Satterfield. Maybe he's going to lay some great foundation recruiting-wise. Maybe they're going to rally the troops and have a great finish to this season. I don't believe that's the case. But you don't want 2-10 back-to-back. And I'm not suggesting that's the case, but it's certainly on the flipping table at the moment, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is crazy to be talking about firing Scott Satterfield or moving on from him just yet. The only reason for that conversation is because fans here are so familiar with where he was at Louisville. And the fact that Louisville wanted to get rid of him, but they just didn't want to pay the buyout. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, that was always the danger of that hire. And listen, I know that Matt Campbell turned the job down, the Iowa State coach. I think he'd have been a home run hire because of look what he did to resurrect the Iowa State program. And he's got some local ties, and he recruited okay here locally. He's taken some kids out of Cincinnati and taken them to Iowa City. So, I mean, it's a perfect storm of ugly just because of the hire, of the lack of success, of just the fact of, again, this program hasn't lost at home very much of late. And now you're losing to middle of the road, to less than middle of the road Big 12 teams. Well, if you're a big boy Big 12 team, those are the teams it's not a matter of, boy, I hope you beat them. No, you have to beat them. I hope you beat Oklahoma. I hope you beat Oklahoma State when it's playing well, which is playing well right now. You got to go there. I hope for those. Those are hopes. And if you do, it's great. No, these are ones you got to get.
Do you think the UC administration is regretting not talking to Deion Sanders more or going after him?
Maybe. It's a great question because, that was kind of the remember that? I think we talked about it on the podcast. I know we talked about it with some colleagues that cover the Bengals, et cetera. That was kind of the whole, oh, yeah, Deion, isn't this going to be cute? They should bring him. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I know this much. I don't know if he'd have any more level of success than Scott Satterfield's had at the moment. I don't. I really don't. I can't say that with assurance.
I don't either.
But by God, there'd be enough juice to get this program revitalized. And that's the problem with the Scott Satterfield thing right now. There's no juice, man. There's none. There is. It's just, God, I hope this guy screws up enough to get him fired sooner rather than later because it feels so damn inevitable. And I hate that because it's not fair 7 games in. It's just not, but it feels so inevitable. It's like, well, as soon as we can do this, let's do it.
Well, it's definitely not fair to the players that are
Right.
there. I mean, the fan base before they even ever had a chance were out on the new head coach, and I don't necessarily blame them for that because I wouldn't have been
No.
excited about that hire either. But man, is this a tough spot to be in? I mean, when you when you've just got no support, and like you said, the fan base is actively rooting for you to fail as quickly as possible so they can just move on. And we're not even midway through year one yet, or we're just getting to the midway point of year
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a tough way to go for Scott Satterfield, but especially the kids on this team right now. The one thing I will give them credit for, though, Skinny, this game looked like it was headed to be a complete blowout. It was a blowout at halftime. I mentioned 29-14 heading in the fourth quarter, and maybe Baylor let their foot off the gas a bit, but at the same time, UC did not quit. They did make a game of it. They did have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter. They ran the ball 43 times for almost 300 yards and a couple of scores. Corey Kiner had a big game on the ground. I mean, there were some positive signs and things that happened late in this game. And I definitely don't think it's a case where Scott Satterfield has lost the locker room at this point with the guys that are in there, but he's definitely lost the fan base, I think.
Yeah, and that's the part is I mean, listen, could you run it 55 times? Maybe you need to. I don't know. I mean, how much of this is schematics? How much of this is what's your identity? How much of this is you just don't have the right personnel? Maybe you don't. Maybe they overestimated that. One thing that is a little distressing is I did think they had enough personnel on defense to hold their own in the Big 12, and to this point, they have not. Yeah, you can argue the Oklahoma game. I'll give you that. Some of that was, I think Oklahoma, after blowing people out, kind of slogged through that game a little bit too and just relied on their defense. But to me, that's the part that's distressing is the defense has just not been very good. And they just keep making special teams gaff after special teams gaff after special teams. Their special teams is a joke.
Yeah. Well, Kentucky was on the bye last week, so they have a big game coming up this week against Tennessee. We'll talk a little bit more about that matchup here in the betting pick segment coming up. But let's move on to college basketball right now. Big East Media Day was Tuesday at Madison Square Garden. We talked about the SEC Media Day, the Big 12 Media Day, and the Horizon League Media Day last week. This week it was Big East. Xavier was picked to finish 6th out of the 11-team conference. Zach Freemantle also curiously was named All Big East preseason honorable mention, even though he's not going to be playing this year for Xavier. Skinny, any thoughts on Big East Media Day and where Xavier's picked to finish here in the Big East?
Yeah, who was right behind them? Providence, is that right? Was
Providence? Yeah, Providence 7th? Right after them.
Providence was 7th and Georgetown was 8th. So if you're going to tell me Providence was 7th with Ed Cooley going bye-bye and Georgetown's 8th because that's probably more of an Ed Cooley bump than anything else, that feels about right. I mean, I'm not sure I can pick them even close to hitting any of the top 5 ahead of them. Can you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe there's an argument to be made that St. John's is just a complete unknown and people are a little too high on them. But
yeah,
my standpoint is that Cat's earned it. I mean, Rick Pitino knows what he's doing,
yes,
and they've got enough talent that he's probably going to be pretty good. So I'm fine with him being
trust
top
him to
5.
stay off the floor of an Italian restaurant with a woman, but I trust that Cat to coach some college basketball.
That's right. That's where I would put it too in terms of an assessment. So I'll take those teams top 5, no problem. I think Xavier 6 is fine. You could argue Providence above them and put them at 7 if you want, and I think that would be right. But 6 or 7 seems to be dead on in my opinion.
And is that probably a spot? Because if you go 6th in the league, you're probably finishing over 500, right? Probably not a ton.
Somewhere right about it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you do enough in the non-con, that should be enough to get you in the tournament. Yes.
I think this is a year where you are going to see at least 5 teams and potentially 6, maybe even as many as 7 knocking on the door of getting into the NCAA tournament this year. So I think the 6th place team would probably be an NCAA tournament team if I had to guess. And that's exactly where I expect Xavier to be at the end of this year. A team that's right on the bubble, trying to play their way in those final games. But if you told me that they slipped and fell down to 7th or 8th and struggled a bit, that wouldn't surprise me either.
All right, give me some secret scrimmage notes, baby. Notre Dame came in and waxed their ass. Give me some secret scrimmage notes.
Yeah, Musketeers lose 91-84 in a secret scrimmage. Allegedly. We, it's a big deal if you report on the happenings of this. But Skinny, the funniest part of this whole deal.
How do you know the score if it was secret? Whoa. How do you know the score if it was secret?
I'm about to tell you, this is another perfect like college athletic situation where we have to do this whole charade of it's a secret scrimmage and no one's allowed in and it's closed down. It's a state secret. It's a very big deal. And the coaches have to yell at everyone about, don't you dare let a box score out or I'll fire everyone on my staff and all of this stuff, right? And lo and behold, Xavier and Notre Dame are playing this scrimmage at Cintas Center on Sunday afternoon, and live tweets start popping up from at CIE Guardians. And we get through the first half. This kid has stats. This kid has all types of description of what's going on. And then at halftime, he goes live on Twitter Spaces. The entire second half, he does a play-by-play broadcast of the second half. And
break all the copyright. Break all the copyright rules, my man. Good luck. Good job.
Well, hey, look, no one has broadcast rights to the secret scrimmage. You know, I mean, he was in the clear on that, but Xavier was not too happy about this information getting out there. Of course, there was a huge investigation. I believe the kid might have left like a cup behind that got him in trouble or whatever. So they're going through the security footage and
DNA. They got DNA on him.
Yeah, but I mean, how incredible is it that one, that we even have to worry about something like this happening, but two, that this kid, we've been going through these secret scrimmages for years now. There's been different levels of info getting out, but never have we seen, at least to my knowledge, a kid sneak into one of the arenas and broadcast part of the scrimmage live. A ballsy move, and I don't know if we should be congratulating the kid or cheering him on, but I thought it was pretty hilarious.
Son, go get you a job in this business. Well done, buddy. Well done.
Yeah.
You probably won't keep your credential if you keep doing this when you're really a credentialed media member. That's a hell of a start, my man.
I mean, hopefully the kid's like still allowed to be in school, because I think they found him. I don't know what type of punishment you can dole out for something like that. That's not breaking the law or necessarily the code of conduct from what I've read. But yeah, just an awesome situation. And in terms of the actual game, Xavier losing to Notre Dame, who is expected to be one of the worst high major teams in the sport this year. So that is not a good result if you're a Xavier fan. But I mean, like, I never really pay too much attention to scrimmage results in general, just because like last year, Xavier lost to Vanderbilt and then went to the Sweet 16, and Vanderbilt was terrible. So you never really know what to take from it. But like these teams do want to win these things. They may not all play them the same way. They may not all scout the same way, but these teams do try. They do try to win these things. They would rather win than lose, I think, if you asked them. So it's an interesting result for sure that Xavier struggled. That it's fascinating to me that they were able to score 84 points, and their offense must have had a lot of success, and yet they lost to this Notre Dame team that's not supposed to have much talent.
Yeah, all it is a starting point for me. I'm kind of the same. Listen, anything I play or coach, I want to win. But most times I've coached scrimmage games. There's a purpose to it. I just want to see some guys in action. I want to see different lineup combinations. I want to test out a couple of defenses. I remember one year I scrimmaged a team and we both agreed to have like these 2 zone periods just so we could both run our zone offense. We got killed. I think they outscored us 40-4 in the zone period. And I'm like, well, I never zoned for starters, so that's why we were so bad defensively. And yes, our zone offense was terrible, so I have to do a couple of tweaks there. I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, and I heard, like, for instance, not that this affected Xavier because they're not really a zone team, but I heard both teams before the scrimmage said, hey, we're not going to play any zone today, right? Because we just haven't worked on zone offense enough. So there are things like that happen in these scrimmages that make them a little bit different. Also, sometimes you'll have like a guy get 7 or 8 fouls because you're not just going to hold a guy out of a scrimmage because of foul trouble, you know?
Trust me, I saw that in the Kentucky Blue-White game. There was a dude, I wish I could remember which cat he was. He committed 3 fouls in the first 90 seconds. He committed his 7th foul about a minute into the second half. It was great.
Yeah. So you have things like that going on. I don't know that like impacted the situation of the score in this one. I'm not trying to like defend Xavier's loss, but these aren't normal games necessarily.
It's not alarming.
Yeah, it's not alarming, but it is like a result that I understand why people perked their ears up at, or, you know, were kind of surprised when they saw it, because we've heard so much about how bad this Notre Dame roster is going to be and how much Micah Shrewsbury has had to rebuild it since he took over that job this offseason. So, I mean, Xavier is such an unknown coming into this year. I think the biggest thing that stood out for me from the little bit that I heard is just the freshman from Serbia, Lazar Djokovic, who's like 6'10" and skilled and athletic. Sounded like he started at the 4 and played about as many minutes as anybody. So he was a guy that I wasn't sure if he was in the starting lineup or one of the last guys off the bench or where he kind of fit in at this point. Sounds like he's going to be playing an awful lot for this team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, on paper, when you came out of last season, you're down two huge parts for different reasons. Yeah, Zach Fremantle struggles on the defensive end, blah, 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 but he's such a skilled offensive player that he is a difference maker. It's why he got votes for honorable mention in the Big East. And the way Jerome Hunter just progressed and his toughness and physicality, that's a big chunk. I'm not making excuses because you don't got him, so you got to make up for him. But that's a big chunk to lose right there.
Yeah. And I think this team is definitely going to have its struggles, especially early on in the year as they try to get used to life without those guys. But, I mean, they did go to the Bahamas back in the end of July or beginning of August or whatever it was. I mean, that feels like a lifetime ago now. So they have been getting after it for a little bit, and I think they've started to move on by this point.
Dude, they beat the Ron John Tiki Bar team. I mean, come on.
Yeah, not really that so much as it is just practicing together and learning the system and all of those things. I mean, like, you have all these new guys, and we talk so much about 10 new players, but to some extent, I mean, it feels like we've been watching this group practice for 4 or 5 months straight here now.
Well, I heard Sean talk about that. Like, we've been doing this for 3+ months. I'm like, well, you really have, haven't you? Holy cow. That's true.
I mean, it just feels like a long season already. From an outsider's perspective, I'm the one on the court banging and running up and down. So I can imagine how those guys feel.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to our betting segment. Last week, you were 2-2. Remember, we didn't have the Bengals and we didn't have Kentucky. Right. So just 4 picks here, 2 different games. You were 2-2. I was 3-1. That moves you to 29, 22, and 1 overall. I am now 26, 25, and 1 overall. My 49ers.
I believe I lost my teaser too, correct? I think I'm 99% sure I lost.
Yeah, you did. The Lions let you down, and then the Raiders really killed you on your teaser. They were not even close.
Daggone. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then my 49ers first half -3.5 did not hit at all. That completely backfired. And then I stupidly kept chasing points because they were down. And I was like, oh, now we've got great value on the live line. And I kept playing the 49ers and they just never turned it around. So that was a costly Monday night game for me. But we're going to get some of it back here this weekend. Starting Saturday at 7 p.m., we've got Tennessee at Kentucky. The Vols are a 3.5-point favorite. 51.5 is the total.
Yeah, I think the game goes way over the total, to be honest with you. It's hard for me to pick Kentucky at the moment. I know they're coming off the bye week. Hopefully they've tweaked some things and twinged some things. And what was Cal's? He's got the tweak and the twinge. Was that what it was? The tweak?
The tweak.
He's got the tweak. Yeah, I don't know what the tweak might be. If it's the up-tempo, all of those things. You want to go up-tempo when Tennessee wants to go up-tempo. So I'm not sure if it's a good time to do all those things. And it's hard for me to pick Kentucky, but I am going to pick them to cover because I'm an idiot. So I'm going to go Tennessee 33, Kentucky 30. So Kentucky plus the 3.5 and the over for me. A win wouldn't shock me, and a blowout loss wouldn't shock me, to be quite frank. I don't know what to expect. I think this feels like Custer's last stand for this team to make it a season that they want to make it. Because if not, then they're going to be fighting just to get bowl eligible.
I couldn't agree more. I said last week, is it basketball season week for Kentucky? If they lose this game,
I went to the blue-white game, so I'm already in basketball season.
No one will be paying attention to them the rest of the year if they lose this game. If they find a way to win it, all right. I think people will hang on a little bit and see what happens, play the string out on the season. I'm with you, though, in terms of handicapping this game. I think it's a close game, and I think it's a 3-point field goal game either way. I'm going to go Tennessee to win, but Kentucky to cover that 3.5 as well. But I'm actually going under on this game. I know you said you really like the over here. I'm going 27-24, so staying under by the 0.5 point. 51 the total for me. Kentucky and the under is my pick. So Saturday at 7:30, we have Ohio State at Wisconsin. The Buckeyes are a 14.5-point favorite, and the total is 44.
Just feels like an ugly game where Ohio State's going to win and comfortably, but it just feels ugly. I'm going to go Ohio State 27. That's even too high. I'll go 24-13. Ohio State wins it. Their defense, Wisconsin's so bad offensively. 24-13. So Wisconsin covers. It stays under, and Ohio State gets a very comfortable win.
All right. So Skinny is on Wisconsin and the under. Look, Wisconsin only scored 6 points against Iowa 2 weeks ago.
I know it.
Iowa has their style, and they are a good defense too. But
what is that style? Time out. Whoa. What is that style? We don't score.com?
Yeah, it's just punt, punt, and defend. Hit hard.
God almighty, it's so bad.
For that point, I don't think this Wisconsin team is scoring at all against Ohio State. Hardly. I'm going to go a pity touchdown late, but Ohio State 28, Wisconsin 7 is my score. So I've got OSU and the under. Saturday at 8 p.m., we've got Cincinnati at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a 7.5-point favorite, and the total is 53.
Oklahoma State looks so awful against South Alabama. I mean, they got boat raced 33-7 at home. And I'm like, oh, there's a win for UC on top of the Baylor and Iowa State games. And boy, they could come out of that game if they just lose to Oklahoma and beat Miami. They're going to maybe only be a one-loss team at that point. Now you're fighting for survival. And I just don't see it, man. I get that they're still fighting. You're right that they fought back in the Baylor game. But Oklahoma State's playing really, really well at the moment on the road at night in Stillwater. I lived in Tulsa for a while, so I know what good old boy Oklahoma late nights are like. So trust me, there's going to be a bunch of rowdy crowd there and a handful of drunks and all those things. I just feel this game gets out of hand for UC. I'm going to go Oklahoma State 34, UC 14.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I'm going Oklahoma State 35, Cincinnati 24. So Oklahoma State and the over for me. Oklahoma State has won 3 straight games now as an underdog. Those were against Kansas State, Kansas, and West Virginia. Not that any of those are too incredibly impressive, but it's certainly better than what UC's been doing recently. It just kind of shows you the trajectory of the season for Oklahoma State. I think they're on a roll. All right, let's move on to our Sunday game. 425.
We got to do our best bet. What's your best bet?
Well, we got to do our Sunday game first and then the best.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. My fault.
Yeah. Sunday at 425, we've got the Bengals in San Francisco playing the 49ers. The 49ers are a 5.5-point favorite, and the total is 45. And I'll tell you, I already got the Bengals +6. So this line is moving the other way.
I think it's down to 4.5 at the moment, Rick. So yes, and it's because of obviously the injury to Brock Purdy and the Sam Darnold
just changed
situation.
Then.
Yeah, and it may go even less. So at the point that we've got it, I think this is the Bengals. This is what they do. They make you wring your hands. They come out of the bye. They're healthy. They're going to play well, in my opinion. I think they pull off the upset. I'm going to go Bengals 27. Now I'll go Bengals 26, 49ers 23.
All right. I'm with you on that. I think the Bengals are going to win this game outright, actually. And I think this is kind of the same old script we've seen from this team, especially going back to last year. I'm going to say Bengals 16, 49ers 13. So Bengals in the under for me. All right. What's your best bet of the week, Skinny?
I got to do it. It's my trademark. I'm going to the 14 teaser route one more time. I just got to keep going to the well. I'm still living on the house money from the one big teaser win. So I think these are all 1:00 games. I'm going to take Dallas. I'm going to use a 6-point teaser rather, not 6 teams. 6.14 teaser. I'm going to take Dallas down to a pick 'em at home against the Rams. I'm going to take Green Bay up to getting 6 at home against Minnesota. Every Monday night winner comes the next week and lays an egg. It's just kind of tradition. They either lay an egg or don't cover. That game is a pick 'em in Green Bay. Give me a freaking break. That's silly, and I don't think Green Bay's any good. I'm going to take Indy up to getting 7.5 at home against New Orleans, and I'm going to take Miami down to 2.5 at home against New England.
All right. I'm going to go with.
Actually, Rick, I'm making it a 5-teamer.
Add it on. Who do you want?
I'm throwing Pittsburgh in there, getting 8.5 at home against Jacksonville. All 1:00 games.
Okay, there you go. So 5-team teas for Skinny. I'm going a single college football game, and this one could go either way. This could definitely be a backfire game, but I also think it's probably more likely to go the other way, which is Penn State's going to bounce back in a big way. Indiana is the best team to play if you're looking for a get-right game. I'm going to pick Penn State to cover the 32 points. I think they're going to win this one by 40+, like 55-10 or something. So ride Penn State, even though they're getting 32 points, just swallow hard and play them.
That's a job that's going to come open at the end of the season, the Indiana job.
Yeah, those guys have quit. All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything to wrap this one up. We'll start with a sports question. Skinny, what is the best sports logo in Cincinnati, pro and college?
That's a good one. I like D'Artagnan. I like the Musketeer a lot. I think the Cyclones logo is pretty cool. UC's is pretty cool, but they don't use it like a ton on like helmets or things like that. I do love, from a uniform perspective, I do love the cats or the cats thing across the front for UC, the old school. Maybe it's because I grew up in that era. Those movies. I'm going to go Xavier's logo. I like Xavier's logo a lot.
Are you talking about the old Running Man logo or the X?
No, well, is that the logo I use? I think D'Artagnan's the logo to me. Is he not?
Oh, you're talking about the man.
Yeah. Well, no, that's they use that as a logo too. The X is part of it. See, that depends. There's a lot of different things that you use as logos too. That's the other part.
Well, fair, but I mean, I think their logo is an X. They have the X with like a sword through it sometimes.
Yeah,
And
I'm thinking
then
the
they have
D'Artagnan
the
one.
old school Running Man logo with like the dribbling.
I'm going
basketball.
Cyclones. The hell with all of them. I'm going Cyclones.
I think the Seapaw is the best logo in college for sure. Probably period. I think the Seapaw is the best logo for Cincinnati.
Where they spent $100,000 to take the C and put it in italics.
But I mean, it is a good logo though. I mean, I don't know how complicated we need to get with it.
Involved there, but sure.
What about Red Legs, or not Red Legs, but Mr. Red for the Reds when they used like the old school
when they use
running?
the patch? Yeah, I do like that one too, but they don't do it in. That's what I'm saying. Is what do you consider the logo? I guess.
Yeah, I like when it's that. I like Xavier's Running Man logo. I like UC's Bearcat dunking the basketball with the Seapaw.
That's a good one. I like that one too.
Yeah, and same thing with Kentucky, the old UK with the Wildcat dunking the basketball around it, or maybe it's not dunking, but scratching.
Yeah, scratching.
Yeah, in terms of pro, I mean, the Bengals B sucks. They have like the worst logo for a team that has something good to work with.
Yeah, but you do like their helmets though, right? The stripes are still pretty iconic.
The helmets are incredible. That's what I'm saying. You have so much good to work with, and then you do that stupid B.
To me, that's the helmet logo, though. That to me is the helmet logo. I know what you're saying. I don't know what the question is, but that's the logo to me.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, you are flat out wrong about that, but I get what you're saying. Nothing.
That's all I got on it.
Okay. If Skinny, if you found out your opponent was stealing signs, would you turn them in, or would you lay a trap and switch your signs to make them regret it?
Oh, I'd lay a trap in a heartbeat. I would hope that the intelligence got back to me that you stole the sign. I'd mess you up so bad you wouldn't even know what just hit you. You'd be thinking I'd be running back cuts and I'm running some kind of flare screen, and you'd be looking at me going, "What the hell? That's a slip screen set." No, buddy, it's not. We're coming out the other side on a flare. We're about to back cut you in a minute where we used to go dribble handoff. You're dead. Have a good time with it, though.
I used to love doing that when I was coaching, where you put in like little tags on the end of your calls or at the beginning of them or what have you, where it's the same call, but you just change something about the way you said it, or like at the end, you clapped once or you said something in addition to it, and it just changed it slightly. So you're now running a counter. So it looked like the play, but it was actually something different. That's like the best thing to do in sports. I mean, if people are stealing your signs, you should be dominating them. That's like the easiest time to screw them up.
So I've always had these a couple of sets that were I call they're colleges. They're named after colleges. And at one point, I had an official come by me and goes, "Huh, it's funny those college sets that you're calling with different names. They sure look the same." I said, "They sure are, aren't they?" I said, "But boy, they sure sound different when I'm calling them, don't they?"
Yeah, or like you could use all words that start with the same letter or what have. I mean, there's all different types of variations that teams use to do these things. I feel like that's half the fun of coaching, is like trying to hide your signs and trick the opponent.
Correct.
Skinny, when's the last time you've swallowed gum?
It's been a while. It's one of my favorite Andy Griffith episodes where Barney swallows his gum after he captures a guy in the barn, and Barney's freaking out because he's like, it's the second time he's captured this criminal, and he can't speak for a second. And Andy turns to him and goes, "Barney, speak to me. What's the matter?" He goes, "Swallowed my gum." I haven't done that in a while. I'm not a big gum swallow. I will tell you, let me give you the worst thing I ever did from a gum swallowing standpoint. This was back in high school, back when we were men were men, and we were proud to be men. We as a baseball team at Dixie, we chewed Red Man, and I was not totally into it, so I had always wrapped mine in bubble gum, which makes it even sweeter, and you're spitting constantly. So it was a game. For some reason, I didn't start, so I came in as a pinch hitter and got a base hit. And I'm on base, and I'm easily going to steal second. And I'm like, I'm taking off on this pitch. Off I went. By God, if I didn't swallow that whole damn thing. And I just called a quick time, walked to center field, and just up-chucked it all, brother.
Oh, that's...
By the way, I never chewed Red Man again. I never chewed Red Man again after that, in case you're wondering.
It only takes one.
Only takes one.
All right. By the way, I actually feel like I've done this recently because I find myself all late chewing gum occasionally, and then like I go on air for something.
Oh,
Right. Like
I take it
now we're
out.
on TV or we're doing an appearance, and
I take it
like,
out.
oh,
You,
I forgot.
you swallow it before that, or you take it out?
Well, I've had it happen where I didn't realize it until it was too late, and I was just like, oh, we're on. Like I just got to swallow this now. So that's probably
Oh,
happened within the last few years.
I've done. In fact, I did it today when I did the Mo Egger thing. I had gum in my mouth because I was coaching, and I took it out and held it in my hand during the whole interview, and then popped it back in.
Oh,
Probably
how was
disgusting,
that?
but
A little stale or
no, it still had a spearminty flavor to it, in my opinion.
nice?
Still
All right,
served
saving that
still
for
served
later.
its purpose.
All right. Mark says, "What is your favorite Italian food? I'm currently in Italy." That was just a come on, Mark. That was just a humble brag there.
That's a humble brag. It's a nice humble brag.
Yeah, just wanted to tell us he was in Italy.
So listen, so we'll go to Pompilio's a few times a year. It's such a great Italian place. I can go to a lot of Italian places, but that's one of my favorites because it's very genuine. It's iconic too. On top of it, their spaghetti with meat sauce is outstanding. But, and this is going to gross a lot of people out probably, I'm a big veal piccata guy. I don't get it all the time. I get it every once in a while. I know a lot of people are grossed out by that, but when it's made right, in my opinion, and again, it's not it is an Italian dish because it's in an Italian restaurant. It's cooked in an Italian dish, but it's not obviously spaghetti and meat sauce. They do have angel hair spaghetti on the side, which is so good. They do it a little garlic. It's the most perfect. It's one of my top 3 or 4 meals ever. So yeah, veal piccata. But again, a good spaghetti with just good meat sauce and maybe one solid meatball on the side. I don't need 5 meatballs, just a good solid meatball on the side. You give me that in a glass of red wine or 7, I'm good to go, man.
You had soda?
I've not had soda. I've heard nothing but good
Oh,
things. Yeah.
It's off the chart. To me, it's the best food experience you'll get in the city.
What's your go-to meal there?
Well, you got to try like multiple things. It's short, small servings. You share them with like.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I like that concept.
But short rib ravioli is the one you got to get.
Oh,
That's
I bet.
just off the charts good.
I'll bet. Are they
also,
big raviolis?
No, not huge, but
normal sized.
Yeah, you also got to save room though for the donuts after dinner.
I've heard
off the charts. Yeah. Finally, what's the best moment of live radio that you can recall listening to? We've been asked a few times about the best live radio I think that you've done, but I don't know.
Correct.
In terms of what we've heard. Yeah.
I didn't hear the call, so shame on me because I was actually in the stadium at the time. I still think Marty's call of Pete's 4192 was superb with Joe in the background yelling, "Get down, get down, get down." That's still one of my favorites. Maybe it's local, etc. All those things. I'm a huge Kaywood Ledford fan who called Kentucky games forever. He never had one seminal moment, in my opinion, where I'm like, that was iconic. The Marty call of that was pretty damn good, in my opinion.
I'm trying to think. I feel like there have definitely been days where I've just been dying, laughing in my car, driving around, not wanting to get out because of something going on, like a talk radio bit or whatever, Mo's show, or maybe someone else's even back before Mo really got it rolling. I can't think of any specific incidences though off the top of my head. Any really good bits?
Because those all run together, right? I mean, you hear a good bit, or you hear occasionally just a funny caller who's just a nut, and you're like, oh, how's he going to handle this guy, etc. Because I remember handling those guys, and I usually go, okay, have a good day, click, see you later, you're done. I hate to do this, and this is terrible to say. I love good hosts, and I love listening to good hosts. I'll be honest with you. I've come to really enjoy Kentucky Sports Radio's show. I really do. It's kind of in that morning lull for me where I'm driving to Bengals and I can get it out of a station in Lexington. And when the hosts are talking, I find it enjoyable. And then we go to Jimmy Joe goes, "You remember I met you back in that bookstore in Owensboro, right?" Yeah, we sure do. And then it's just some stupid question. I'm like, oh, click. I can't do it. I want to do it. I can't do it.
Matt, what's going to be the key to beating Tennessee this week? I'll hang up and listen.
There's never a hang up and listen. It's, I met you back at the bookstore in Middlesboro. You remember that? Nah, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Why are all the phone connections in Kentucky so bad? Why do they all?
Also, like, whatnot, or just go work.
I don't no. And by the way, for those of you who live in Kentucky, Rick and I are proud Kentuckians, just in case you are wondering.
And I actually agree. It's so funny because Matt Jones is a guy who, like, the way he broke into covering all this stuff was basically by stealing information off of sites like I run.
I didn't respect a lot of that.
Yeah, and he would just take that stuff when it was behind paywalls. He would put it out for free. And Kentucky was a big enough fan base that there was actually the interest that you could just get enough page views. Like most fan bases, that's not going to work for, like Ohio State football, some of the other big SEC football programs, and then, North Carolina and Kentucky and Duke maybe for basketball it would work. And that's about it. But he knew that would work, and he did a great job of it early. I really despised him early on because of his kind of attitude he had towards doing that and the way he carried himself. But I will say they've continued to maintain a great site. The quality's really never wavered in terms of how much content and the quality of it that they put up. And the radio show, like you've said, I mean, Matt's kind of matured into a pretty good host himself, and the cast of characters he has works around him. And I'm with you. It's a pretty good show. And just in general, you're talking about listening to a good host. I'm to the point where I'd just rather never hear callers during talk radio. It's like
I'm with you. And people always bitch about, you need to take more callers. Why? What do most of them add? I mean, you really don't.
Yeah, it's the one time I kind of like it is in a post game show, like a call-in post game show. I do think it can be kind of funny there because you just get people absolutely losing their minds. And quite honestly, the content in shows like that aren't very good from the host either. So it's like, I'd rather just hear the stupidity. But like on a daily basis, listening to talk, afternoon drive radio, I don't want to hear callers with bad questions.
Yes. Because it's uncomfortable because as a host, you got two things. You can either be an ass and blow them up. And most people are not that way. I mean, I wasn't even that way. I didn't suffer fools very gladly. But at the same time, I get it. You don't know what you're talking about. You think you do. You want to be, and it's like, I'm gonna have to give you an answer that you're not gonna like it because I'm gonna give it to you straight. There's a guy who called Lance the other night about, why doesn't that killer call better plays? Dude, that's the best you got? That's literally the best you got, my brother. All right, good luck to you. Have a good day.
That's what my concern for people is, like, if you're, and I say this to people on the Xavier site I run occasionally, it's like, if you are on this site and you're reading it regularly, you clearly understand by what you're reading that you don't get the game like most of the other people talking about it on here.
Right.
It's okay for you to just read and listen and learn.
Correct.
Like you don't have to always put in your comments or ask your questions that don't make any sense and like you clearly don't understand what's going on. It's fine to not know. You can just learn. That's okay too.
It's okay too. I'm with you though. I mean, I'd rather listen when there's good hosts. I'd just rather listen to that because that entertains me in the second. I mean, I love Dan Patrick, and I'll occasionally get Susie in Des Moines. Susie's got or Jimmy in. I'm 6'2", 210. Good click. See you later. Have a good day. I'll go somewhere else, guy.
You're not the Jim Rome guy.
No.
Smack off or whatever.
No. Always was a turnoff. That show always has been I haven't watched or listened to that till the days where it was on the station I was on. No, thank you.
It was great if you were 17.
Yes, correct.
When you were about 17 years old, it was
correct.
A really good show. I remember in high school thinking, what a cool
correct.
show this is.
Correct.
And that was about the time it ended. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All
well,
right,
Rick, appreciate it as always. Thanks for the questions. We will be back next week. Appreciate everybody's flexibility. We had to go a little bit early, but you're not going to notice the difference. This will be up on Thursday morning, and it'll sound the same. It'll all be the same. You'll either like it the same or you'll hate it the same. So that's what it is. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.
You can always get local stories right here on YouTube, but go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get notifications to stay in the know.